Alright, this is gonna be my a little PTR patch notes discussion for Warcraft 3, the newest patch 1.35 or future patch, however you want to look at it. And we're just gonna see what all there is. I've definitely heard of quite a few things, and I also caught the end of another stream talking a bit about it, but I have not actually looked over the full list myself. So I'm just gonna dive into it, see what I think. And yeah, I've definitely heard a couple things about a couple of the big changes, but you'll see when we get there what those are. Anyways, let's see, what does this say? Okay, they opened the PTR for the holidays. Custom campaigns, balance, map pool, leaderboard fixes again. And of course, you have to add additional improvements because surely there's additional improvements somewhere, right? And then, thanks for testing, XD. Let's see, custom campaigns. So they added the ability to play them. Was this not in the game already? Didn't they have the Beastmaster custom campaign thing already that you can play? Or did the I don't even know. Maybe it wasn't even there anymore. I don't think I care too much about this stuff, but just kind of looking it over real quick, see if there's anything important. It looks like they're mostly just for those who are interested in custom campaigns, they'll have something for that. Anyways, the big thing, balance. All right. I did not hear about this change. An interesting one. So the first change is just a general change to everyone, and it's tavern revive cost increased by 5%. I'm not sure if I care about it, or if it's good or not. There is, of course, some merit to not allowing people to just instantly get a hero back after they made a mistake to lose their hero. But there's also some merit to having it cheap enough, especially when your hero comes back with half health and no mana. So making it cheap enough that you can still do something with it. I don't really know if 5% is going to mean much. It definitely is already really costly at some of the high levels. So I think that's where it'll matter the most, right? Like if you lose a level 5 hero or something, and this cost is actually quite a bit higher, could be a real problem. Also, it just says cost increase. It doesn't say gold cost. So if it's wood cost as well, that could be a real problem situationally, because some of the wood costs are also quite high for that. We'll have to see how it goes, but honestly, I don't think it's really needed, but there are quite a few tavern revives when heroes die, so maybe that's the purpose. They see that it's being used, so they think, okay, maybe we should make it used less. Make it so you have to consider it more, right? Or make it so players get punished more for losing their hero. It might be all right. All right. Well, looks like they're adding a fourth playable race, human. I didn't know this was a thing for Warcraft. I wasn't expecting human in the patch notes. All right. Let's see. What do we got for human? Blacksmith, lumber cost reduced. I don't like that. I mean, it's fine, I guess. It's only 10 wood. But, like, why? I'm trying to think what was the thoughts behind this, but I feel like maybe we'll have to see through the other changes what it was. Because personally, I already see humans. They mostly just go fast expo and a lot of footmen in a lot of matchups. So making their wood costs even lower makes it so that they always hit their timings even better, right? Like if you start killing their workers because they screwed up with their creeping or took too much damage or they were out of position or whatever, small things like this add up and have less impact when you do good things against your opponent. You want your good things done, picking off workers, etc., to be rewarded. So when their cost is lower, I don't know. It's probably fine because it's only 10 wood on a blacksmith, whatever. But yeah, could see some quicker rifle transitions, I guess. Peasant HP increased 230 to 240. Sounds really powerful. I'm pretty sure they were already increased in the previous patch from maybe like 220 or 225 to 230 or something. So another 10 health is pretty big, especially considering how good militia are in the early game and how well human is able to set up their expansion on basically any map against most races. Like humans already get their expansion up, so now they're making it even easier. So there's actually less merit now. Slightly less merit. It's only 10 health, but slightly less merit to even go for certain harasses because you might be picking off less workers, right? Control magic moved from tier 2 to tier 3. I think that's a good change. I think breakers are already super OP. They have been nerfed like multiple times, I believe. But the times they were nerfed were like armor changes and stuff. But while that does make them weaker, their main strength is all their different abilities, right? Control magic, feedback, spell steal, magic immunity. This is an insane combo, right? It's kind of like destroyers in a way, right? Both of them have a lot of abilities and it just makes them extremely powerful, especially because they're magic immune. Magic immune units in the game are just strong to begin with. So yeah, I think control magic tier 2 to tier 3 is a good change. It means they'll have to be more reliant on their actual priest dispel at first, and they can't just control everything right away. Because controlling magic right away at tier 2 can really swing the tide in some of the early fights, especially if you steal level 2 wolves, for instance, or even treants. Let's see, siphon mana cost increased from 10 to 20. Yes! Oh my god. So siphon mana is one of those spells that has annoyed me since forever. And one of the reasons it annoyed me is you almost never can lose mana from it. Because the first tick to steal mana is so quick, and the tether range is longer than the cast range. So after you get into cast range, they have a travel time before they can break the tether. It's not like the cast range and tether range are the same, right? You got your cast range here, and you got your tether range a little bit longer. So they have to still go through that little extra distance. So having some sort of initial mana cost where the human has to actually think for more than a tenth of a second whether their blood mage is in a good position to steal mana or not is good. And then the drain reduced as well. I think that's fine. It's very small reduction, and it's definitely still very powerful. Level 2 Siphon will still be really good. Level 3 Siphon is already hardly seen, so whatever. Holy Light cooldown reduced from 5 to 4 seconds. This one's kind of crazy, and I'm unsure of why it was done. But Holy Light was already a very short cooldown spell. To put it into perspective, let's look at this Death Knight. What does the Death Knight say? Coil is 6 seconds, right? So its undead counterpart, Coil, is already at 6 seconds. And Holy Light is cheaper, lower cooldown, and now it's getting an even lower cooldown. I can see some merit for Coil being higher cooldown, of course, because Coil more often does damage, because there's more races that take damage from Coil compared to Holy Light. But yeah, it's an interesting change. It definitely makes Paladin stronger, but Paladin is already part of the human trio that is already super powerful. Yeah, it is a good point. Paladin could blow through his mana even quicker now, but usually with Brilliance and Siphon support, should generally be fine. We'll see how it functions. I think the biggest problem with a change like this is the people that go around with like Divine Shield, Holy Light, and kill Acolytes. If they're able to kill Acolytes even faster, that's a huge deal during Divine Shield's duration. Like if you can get 3 Holy Lights in, what is that, 10 seconds, maybe 11 seconds because of a little bit of delay or whatever on the casting and whatever, compared to, or that was before, right? Like you could do like 3 Holy Lights in like 11 seconds, let's say. You know, the first one instant, the next 2 5-second cooldown, 5-second cooldown, little delay. And now it's like 9 seconds, you know, 8 or 4, and then like an extra second for delay. Now, those seconds mean a lot when you have Divine Shield being around 15 seconds, right? You might be able to get an extra Holy Light before the Divine Shield runs off and you start getting slowed by an Arubian, that sort of thing. So I think that's where the big problem lies, is does this make a lot of undeads have problems against some sort of Paladin first Holy Light play? I don't think it'll be a top level problem, but at lower levels of play, that could be a big annoyance, to be honest. At top levels of play, this will mostly still just be a third hero and a top tier third hero choice. So, yeah. Polymorph cost reduced from 220 to 200. Yeah. Oh yeah, the other thing to mention about this Holy Light cooldown is it definitely opens up more Paladin Blood Mage gameplay. However, with Siphon also getting nerfed, I think that's fine. I think that's fine. Because that was one of the big problems for the other race to deal with, was Siphon, right? So if the slight nerfs to Siphon hopefully helps, especially this cost. This cost, when you're casting it on your own ally hero, you know, the Blood Mage isn't gaining mana back, he's just siphoning into the Paladin. So this cost is very meaningful for that. So I think this combination of changes is fine together for that strategy. It doesn't make it like super overpowered or something. Polymorph cost reduced from 220 to 200. New spell? Question mark? Okay, so polymorph is kind of irrelevant. Yeah. You just typically don't get tier 3 human casters. And if you do, it's usually priests more so than sorks. You know, sorceress is it's just not a thing currently. But sure, this is fine. The fact that it's not used like at all means that it's fine to do a little change like this and see if it shakes anything up. I don't think it'll matter, but you know, maybe you'll see a couple people try it just to see how it goes, right? Critter sight range increased. Okay. It's probably fine. I mean, critters are probably underused in general, and they definitely have quite a bit of value. But you know, maybe this sort of change will be good enough to make people try them out more, because they're actually very cheap. You know, you can afford to toss out 50 gold here and there just to have a mobile ward, essentially. So that's fine. Siege engine, a bunch of changes. So we'll look at them all together. Heavy armor attacks units. Barrage damage increased, but base damage reduced. Which it just sounds kind of bad overall, right? The barrage damage increase is kind of crazy. Barrage already can do a very good job against mass air if the mass air player stays in barrage range. But this increase is probably needed if it has, you know, heavy armor now. So yeah, it sounds like Siege Engine's kind of dead. Personally, I don't mind because I don't really like that sort of gameplay to begin with, but having those few people who make use of it can it should be something probably in the game for variety of strategies, right? So I think if they're gonna do these changes, they could have maybe done like all three of these changes and then left it fortified. Or they could have not done this change. Yeah, they could have just not done this change and then have the other three. You know, maybe the base damage or the armor. One of them needs to not be there. Like it needs to either stay with the damage it was or stay with fortified. And then I think it'd probably be fine. It'd be weird with heavy armor. But yeah. Yeah. Like it'd be fine. If it was fortified and had like 22 siege damage versus ground units, I think that's perfectly fine. Like you still aren't going to really use it, right? Like maybe you'd add some as like pseudo tanks against bears. Like if because but I forget, is Siege Engine require tier 3? Or is it just some of the upgrades? Siege Engine, yeah, Siege Engine is tier 3 as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think honestly just switch this back to fortified and I don't know. Maybe that's fine. Or they need like multiple damage things, right? Have the barrage damage also hit ground, but without splash, and then the base damage stays the same, something like that. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. Mass teleport cooldown increased. Okay, I kind of like that. I do think mass teleport and tranquility are probably the two strongest ultimates in the game. The other strong ultimates people would say, I mean, you got metamorphosis, primal split from Panda, and like Avatar of Vengeance, and resurrection from Paladin's pretty good, but you just never see it because he's like a third hero. Infernal, like some of these are all pretty powerful as well. Some of the tavern heroes as well have some strong ultimates, but mass teleport and tranquility, I would argue, are the strongest. And the reason why is because they have value even when you're not in a fight and your opponent can't just TP out to disengage, right? Like mass teleport, you can force your opponent to be somewhere. Force them to TP to wherever you teleported into. And then you just teleport out yourself. So it's like, I think this is fine. It'll still be strong. You would still choose mass teleport. You would just more often have to rely on using a actual teleport to get out rather than mass teleporting in and then mass teleporting back out. Mortar HP increased. Interesting. I'm not sure if I like this, but I think I prefer something like this more so than any of the other actual human units getting buffs. I think if you buff something like rifles or breakers or whatever, like they could just be insane, right? Like rifles have pretty good attack animations, decent health and damage. They're just not like broken levels currently. So I'm glad that those aren't getting buffed. But yeah, like if you're gonna buff human in some way that doesn't just crush stuff, I think this is an okay way to do it. But I don't know if it helps them enough in like all matchups, right? Because you mostly see mortars against elf and sometimes undead if they have like banshees fragmentation. People say buff blade more. I don't know. We'll see what the blade stuff says. I personally think blade's pretty strong as is. I think mirror image is underused, and mirror image has a buff now, which is weird to see this sort of buff. Anyways, Siege Engine. Okay, that's just like a bug fix. It's kind of weird that they put this under human here instead of like bug fixes or whatever. Let's see. Orc. Headhunters. Cost increased from 140 to 160, and lumber cost increased from 20 to 30. This is definitely an over nerf. Personally, I liked the idea of something like lower base damage on headhunters and then have that damage on berserker form. So you play tier 1 and tier 2 without that damage, and then you get it back once you reach tier 3. I think something like that would have been fine. But this change, that is a lot of cost increase. Honestly, headhunters will still be decently strong. They just aren't going to be the thing you mass anymore. I think now the style that you see against human often, I think that's what you'd do more often here as well. So you would make enough headhunters to put some pressure, get some creeping done in the early mid game, right? Where this cost doesn't affect you too much just yet. And then you would stop making headhunters and you would switch to like grunt shaman, for instance, against like human, that sort of thing. Yeah. And the reason why is because, there's this now. Brute strength bonus increased from 100 to 150. I think this is a sketchy change. It's probably fine against undead and mirror. But against human and against elf, this could be pretty big. An extra 50 health is fairly relevant, especially when some of the common strategies right now have been, or just in recent times, have been like grunt shaman, right? And then you add like maybe a couple raiders and a Kodo or something. You kind of just get grunt shaman, and so having this extra 50 health, yeah. I mean, it might be fine. It might be just fine. I'm mostly scared about like dual racks all-ins where they just have too much health to go through. But it does require tier 2 to get brute strength, so maybe that's fine. Blade Master mirror images now do 10% of the Blade Master's base damage. So it sounds like it doesn't increase based on claws. It'll just have a small amount of damage. Personally, I think mirror image is underused and already pretty strong. Mostly because you don't always have good ways to dispel it. Like even dryads, right? If you have a bunch of dryads against Blade Master and he has mirror image, if he does his mirror image and you go to abolish it, you have to use like 3 different abolishes, one on each blade, to see which one's the illusion, which one's real. And then after you find it out, you have to cast like 2 more abolishes on each of the actual illusion blades to actually get rid of the illusions. So you're looking at 5 different dispels just to get rid of the 2 mirror images, right? Or if you're playing like dryads, for instance, against it. That's a lot of dispels. And the reason why is because Blade Master oftentimes just has a lot of health from carrying circlets and so on. And that health helps the mirror images. So, oh. This is probably fine though. Like it shouldn't be a problem because it's only 10% damage and it's 10% of base damage, not all damage. So it shouldn't matter for auras or items. It should just be the base damage, I believe. So this is like very minimal. It's probably a good change. You might see more mirror image play. It might be cool. It'll innovate some of the gameplay. Endurance aura nerfed. Okay. I mean, people kind of want movement speeds nerfed to begin with, so it's understandable. Witch Doctor healing wards increased from 5 to 10 HP is crazy. This is not the proper change, in my opinion. Stasis trap activation delay. Maybe this one's fine. I don't like the healing wards one though. Healing wards are honestly already extremely strong. Like the problem isn't the power level of healing wards, it's getting there, right? So if you wanted to buff witch doctors and make it meaningful, you should have done something. Blizzard should have done something with like making witch doctors tier 2 instead, or tier 2, making witch doctor healing wards skill a adept upgrade rather than master, and then make stasis trap master. something like that, right? That would definitely help Orc a lot. You could actually go, you know, a couple witch doctors with adept training on tier 2, and then like a couple shaman, because shaman already can clear quite a bit with just a couple purges. And they have decent mana and so on. So I could see something like that. But leaving this as is and then making it stronger doesn't seem like the right way. So I don't really like this change. Because I think once you do get healing wards, it's probably too powerful. It would be better if healing wards were just more accessible. You don't need them stronger, you just need them easier to get to. Yeah. So I think making it an adept upgrade or lowering the mana cost of healing wards, maybe something like that could be fine. I don't know. Well, so that's the orc changes. So overall, orc mostly gets a meta shift, right? They're definitely weaker in terms of the headhunter build, but the grunts are stronger. The blade master mirror images are stronger, so there's a lot of merit there. I think it's just a meta shift. Night Elf Tranquility increased from 60 to 120. Okay, so they did nerf both of the strongest ultimate, or what I say is the strongest ultimates, Tranquility and Mass Teleport. Okay, 60 to 120 is a long increase, but it's probably fine and warranted because it's still going to be powerful. So I think that's fine. Starfall cooldown reduced, probably fine. Mana cost reduced, probably fine. Yeah, I mean, this is fine. Because Starfall's damage is really slow and it's interruptible. So it's fine to have it happen more often, I guess. Druid of the Talon, Crow form now does piercing. I assume they keep the damage numbers. I think this would be a good change if destroyers weren't the only dispel for undead. But because destroyers are the only dispel for undead, I don't think this change can go through as is. But there's ways to change it. Yeah. Like, that's the only problem. Like this change would be just fine. In Elfmere, it would be just fine against human and orc. But against undead, this is a problem because their dispel is a air unit. And talons are a caster. So a caster shouldn't be able to take out the anti-caster unit so easily, right? Is kind of the thoughts. So how would I make this better or change? I mean, you could leave talons with magic damage, but make it so Mark of the Talon is not required, and make it so maybe if talons are in crow form and hit another air unit, they automatically apply fairy fire, like they don't have to cast it. Or make crow form less mana cost. Things like that could help a lot. But yeah, I don't think this should go through as is. But there are ways to make talons stronger in air form, crow form, without doing this. So just do those. Okay. Entangle on units reduced. This is a huge change. I don't think people realize how much Keeper can rely on this in the early to mid game. This completely changes the dynamic on what you can kill. Workers, for instance, if you go for like peon kills, losing that 1 second of damage is kind of a big deal. You know, you might have to do like 2 hits and then entangle and then constant hits to secure a kill. And that's just level 1. You know, there's even less duration on the higher levels, which means you don't guarantee kills on like ghouls. Footmen and ghouls in general require, you know, more hits now to actually kill. And I think there's a real problem with this change if there's no other buffs. Because this change means humans with level 3 Archmage will probably be able to bully Elf after they've expanded already. You know, human will expand, they'll get level 3, and then they'll come across, and Elf doesn't have enough time to actually kill the footman they're entangling anymore, right? When it only took a couple hits or whatever, or like if the footmen were already softened up, it's fine. But to actually kill a footman now, if you need an extra maybe 2 hits even to kill a footman, that's a big difference. That means the Archmage now gets an extra 2 hits on your keeper. The water Ellie next nearby also might get an extra 2 hits on your keeper. And that's why you're just trying to secure a footman kill. So it could be a problem because it feels like Elf currently relies on this to get their kills and survive and, you know, set up for later. But I do think an entangle nerf is fine. I just don't know if this is the right nerf. I personally would have thought maybe just a mana increase could be enough. You know, like what if the mana cost was 85 instead of 75? That could be pretty big. Because keepers oftentimes cast quite a few entangles against footmen, ghouls, etc. in the early to mid game. So if they're having to spend an extra 10 mana each time, it could be a big deal. But maybe that's not enough. Maybe just 10 mana is still not enough. So I don't know. Maybe this will be fine. I do think Keeper gets quite a bit weaker as a first pick hero because of this. But Keeper does get buffed with Thorn Zara, so, you know, okay. I still don't think Thorn Zara is like crucial because it only affects melee to begin with, and you can't control your opponent going melee generally. But yeah, I guess the big thing is you essentially get level 3 thorns on level 2 aura now. Yeah, 0.3. So it makes your level 3 or level 4 keeper a bit stronger if you're going thorns, but that's about it. It's fine. This is not going to break anything, but it could be more viable if you want to go Thorn Zara. And it could be relevant in Bear Mirror. Like that's the big thing, right? This mostly affects just Elf Mirror. But it also can affect Orc, of course. But generally Entangle and Treants were good against Orc. So if you have 3 different spells you want to choose from, you know, you're still sacrificing something else to get it, right? He'll become 3rd hero 1/1/1. I don't know. Because like level 1 thorns is still like nothing, right? 0.15. like whatever. You're still gonna grab probably Entangle first, generally. Which should be the case, because generally you should be grabbing a spell over an aura. But yeah. Level 3. Level 2 aura, just stand there. I don't know, we'll see. It'll be, I think it's a good change for Thorns, but I don't think it's like now you're going Thorns every game or something. It's just, you know, it's a good change for when you actually do choose it. So this change is kind of weird. It's a increased armor for mountain giants, but are also hardened skin damage reduction reduced. And it's hard to quantify how relevant this is. So big hitting things, you know, things that do huge damage hits should be worse, but things that do smaller damage hits should be better, I would think, or like equal. I don't know. I mean, this might be in the right direction, but it's hard to really tell until you see it in action, I feel. Like how the reduction matters. I think the biggest problem with mountain giants is that if this does end up like strong in some way, then it would probably be too powerful with like mountain giants and orbs. But I don't think that'll be the case. I think it'll just be like the same unit and no one will use it much. You know, it'll just be another very situational unit where you hardly can switch into MGs. So I don't know. Whatever. Ultra Vision now requires tier 2 is probably a good change, but it does make Hunter's Hall builds weaker, which does also decrease the amount of viable strategies for Elf, right? Yeah. I mean, the problem with Mountain Giants at tier 2 is healing. So you can get better value out of the Mountain Giants with this armor at tier 2, but you'll just never be able to heal it. So maybe this change is only good on maps where Mountain Giants were already good, aka fountain maps like Concealed Hill or maybe Secret Valley. Now you might actually get Mountain Giants on tier 2. You might be able to hold off or do some sort of damage, just push thing, and then heal up at the fountain. If you can do that, then yeah, maybe this is good because you don't have hardened skin until tier 3 anyways. So having the armor at tier 2 could be good for that. But yeah, Ultra Vision, it's a good change, but like I said, it does mean there's less viability for Hunter's Hall before teching to tier 2. So similar to how they made blacksmith lumber cost reduced. Where is it? They could have maybe had Ultra Vision tier 2, but have Hunter's Hall less wood cost. You know, something like that could be a good change. So that you can still make the choice to go Hunter's Hall early and, you know, be able to afford it. You know, like have a reason for it that doesn't rely on Ultra Vision getting you an advantage. Now you can just have a lot less cost incurred from Ultra Vision and the lower Hunter's Hall. because you're not getting Ultra Vision until tier 2. Yeah, a lot of my strategies already get Ultra Vision at tier 2 anyways, because you go like archers first, and then you get hunters all and dryad bearer after. So this is definitely fine. Now this one, the big immolation change. People have seen some clips, and this immolation is currently broken. It should not ship as is. It should be changed. So I'm pretty sure this line here, immolation damage per interval, should say immolation damage per second. Because if they are going to change, say per interval, and then reduce the interval from 1 to 0.5, then this should have been different numbers as well. It could have been 7.5, 10, 12.5, or, round it up or whatever. But the mana drain reduce, I think that's really good, because it still has an initial mana cost that, makes it so you have to really make a decision every time you activate it. So making it take less mana over time I think that's a good change. I think this is also a good change to make it tick quicker, so that things around you more constantly get hit rather than a damage check every second. Now it's every half a second where you're inflicting something. But the actual damage numbers need to be tweaked to take this into account, and then it should be fine. Yeah, if this was halved, I think it would be fine. But they honestly could also, you could almost have level 1 immolation be the same as it is now, and then make level 2 and level 3 immolation like actually relevant upgrades. Because right now, and in this future patch, I think level 2 and level 3 immolation are negligible. Even in this future patch, I think you would almost still go like immolation and then burn, evasion, burn. Because level 1 immolation right here is, it's enough, right? You want to level your mana burn instead. But yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be tested with proper numbers in place. But a small level 1 increase of damage could be fine. I do think level 2 and level 3 could be bigger. Because most of the time, the units you're facing aren't even weak to immolation in the mid and late game. Again, like the units you're facing are like mass air or fiends, destroyers, or breakers, or rifle caster. Like, you're not getting a ton of value out of immolation against those, I feel. So another change they could have done is bigger AoE if they wanted immolation to be more viable. Because that's also one of the problems. You have to actually be like melee range to whatever you want to hit. Its AoE is pretty small. So we'll see how it changes before the actual patch. But obviously, if it stayed as this, it would be extremely powerful. But I don't think it'll stay as that, so whatever. Anti-magic shield now receives same summon magic damage inflicted by different dispels. So I assume that just means the amount of damage a dispel does now applies directly to the shield health. It's whatever. I mean, I guess it's probably good change, but yeah, they could have made anti-magic shield just weaker health pool instead. Because regardless, it can still be reapplied. And if you're mostly using on heroes, it's way easy to just keep reapplying it on the hero. I don't know. Yeah, a tier 2 push with level 2 immolation, if level 2 immolation is good enough, could be strong as well. Um, it would actually give you a reason to go Dryads with Demon Hunter at tier 2. Oftentimes you just skip Dryads and you go straight to tier 3 and Bears because you already are mana burning. So maybe you could have a different sort of approach, right? Yeah. Anyways, the anti-magic shield, I think it should be nerfed, but I don't know if this is enough or the right change. And it's kind of worded weird, so yeah, we'll see. And I've heard also Undead Mirror. It sounds kind of bad because they just go Mass Destroyers, which is pretty lame. I think Mass Destroyer meta is pretty bad. Unholy Aura nerf, same as Endurance. Okay. I think movement speed R is getting nerfed is probably fine. Because honestly, level 1 Unholy Aura is already really good for movement speed. Yeah, you immediately can tell. That's where ghouls, like when they're tracking your hero from behind, sometimes your hero gets blocked from behind because the ghouls are just faster. And it somehow the hero like chooses to let the unit behind it get in front because it realizes it's faster. Something about the game works like that. So, you know, I think the movement speed will still be relevant even if it's nerfed. Personally. Um, let's see. Animate dead corpses can now be killable and have disease cloud if researched. This I guess is a buff. Being killable is probably a buff for animate dead. But I did hear mentioned earlier that they should be like magic immune, so you can't just dispel them. And I agree with that. Ultimates in general shouldn't really be able to just be dispelled. But yeah, being killable is fine because it can soak damage then. Disease Cloud of Research is weird. Like I already think the treants with Nature's Blessing is weird that it works like that, but you know, if that's what they want, fine. I don't hate it. It's just if you've already researched Disease Cloud though, then you probably already have something else with Disease Cloud, so you don't even need this on your animated dead corpses. But whatever. Ghoul Frenzy 30 health. That sounds really bad for the game. Uh, ghouls are already the big pick for undead in every matchup. So giving them an even stronger upgrade seems like a bad way to go about it. I think this can just get removed. They don't need this. But whatever. Disease Cloud duration reduced. I think that's good. It definitely will last way too long for something that is not dispellable. That's the big thing about Disease Cloud, right? Is you can't actually dispel it. At least some of the other skills that are long lasting, like Slow from Human was pretty long lasting. At least you can dispel it, so you can like group your units and use a wisp if you're elf, for instance, or whatever, or group your units, use a disenchant if you're orc and actually have walkers instead of shaman. But Disease Cloud, since it's not even dispellable, that seems good to reduce its duration. Statue level increase from 2 to 3. I think it's fine to do, but unneeded. Statues should be nerfed in different ways instead. Because statues are already too strong, and it's not XP. It's their abilities. They still need to be strong, because undead, kind of want something at tier 2. And they're kind of reliant on statues. But they could be tweaked a bit, whether it's mana levels lowered, whether it's less health and or mana regen. Yeah. I actually think it might be better for them to be a level 2. Because the only race that kills statues is like Orc with Raiders and Ensnare. Or mass air strategies. And you don't really want the Orc to suddenly be getting a super buffed Blade Master from statue pickoffs, right? So this might even be bad. I think it'd be better to nerf what it actually does, or make its cost more or something. I don't know if making it cost more is the right change, but they could do like a slight gold increase and then some sort of nerf to either the health or mana regen, or slight nerf to both. I don't know. But something else, not this. Or at least not this by itself, if they are going to do that. We'll see what they decide. I've actually wondered, what if statues, hear me out, what if statues could already dispel, but it wasn't devour like destroyers? Like it didn't gain them health and mana? Or maybe it did, but let's say it just is a dispel that they have. But their dispel, or maybe it's still a devour magic, but it costs mana now and doesn't, instead of gaining mana. When they're destroyer forms that gain mana, when in their statues they just lose mana. They like lose part of their mana pool, because their mana pool is kind of finite. But then what if you did that and then you nerfed the other things about statues, right? So you nerf its mana regen and health regen, but you give them a tier 2 sort of dispel. I don't know if that would be good or bad, but I think something like that could be interesting to see, especially if it's something you still had to research, you had to take time for. I think there's probably a way to design it so it's good, but there's probably also a way to make it so it's like broken. But they could make statues theoretically have like unupgraded statues, right? Like not destroyers, but just statues. They could make them have the dispel and make it so that that's their way to gain mana back. If they dispel something, they gain mana that they can use for healing and mana regen and stuff. But I don't know, maybe the dispel would be too strong. Maybe it should be blocked behind something in tier 3. But I think something like that could be an interesting way to change statues so that they are used a little less strictly for the healing and mana, and more for something else like dispelling, which would give undead something to dispel at tier 2 rather than always needing tier 3. Because now, right now, undead always needs tier 3 pretty much, unless they're ghoul rushing, right? Like you pretty much always need destroyer form and orb and oftentimes tri hero. So it's just a random idea thrown out there that I think could be explored, but there's definitely ways it could go bad if it was too strong. But you know, you'd have to look at it and see. Okay, Wand of Illusion reduced from 3 to 2 charges. Fine. It definitely feels worse to find Wand of Illusion when it's only 2 charges. Because right now with 3 charges, you feel very comfortable to toss one out to scout or to creep something. But if it's down to 2 charges, you feel like it probably goes pretty quickly. But I guess that's probably good as well. Because when you consider the other items like Rejuvenation Potion, you know, that one kind of goes pretty quickly, right? Sometimes your opponent just hits you with an attack and your Rejuvenation Potion just stops. So this is definitely a good change. But I do wonder if maybe Rejuvenation Potion could be slightly buffed. Maybe Rejuvenation Potion should heal an extra 50 health over its duration. You know, something small like that. We buff Hippo Riders? I don't know, dude. Maybe Hippo Riders need a buff if Talons end up as buff as this. Kappa. The Wand of Mana stealing buff is very bad for the game, I think. I am not a fan of Wand of Mana stealing, and I sell it all the time. But if it's actually at 75 mana, this makes too big of an impact in the very early game. Think about Northern Isles, where you might actually creep the Tuskars and get Wand of Mana stealing, and then you head over to an expansion attempt, right? If you're now able to steal 150 and gain 150 mana, that is just too crazy in the early game, in my opinion. So I definitely think it should be toned down. It can use a buff, because like I said, I do tend to sell this item every time. But I don't think it needs to be a 75. I think 60, 65, somewhere in between is good. Because 75 is way too impactful against, or just in the early game in general. Like even, you know, think of it from the other side as well. If an Archmage gets Wand of Mana stealing against you and then heads into your base, you're just dead. You're literally dead. Like you now have no spells on your keeper, and the Archmage has infinite water alleys, even if you try to Detto him and stuff. Like you're actually dead. So, you know, it can be used both aggressively to just end the game pretty much, or it can be used against expansions and stuff, and it's just too strong at 75. 60 to 65 should be fine though. 65 as well might even be too strong. I don't know. Like stealing mana can just be really good situationally. We'll see. We shall see. Circlet stats reduced. I don't actually understand what this means. The 112. Does that mean it's actually 111, but you can toggle it to have one additional? Like, is it 4 stats total, or is it 5 stats total? I assume it's 4 stats total. It's just worded poorly to say that. Because it says add an additional, but it's not adding an additional. It's already in the count. So they worded it bad. It's not adding an additional. It should say it should just say this part, but players can toggle the item to switch the extra stat between agi, strength, and int. In which case, yeah, I guess this isn't the change I would do for Circlet. I would personally have it set to 112, but it should automatically choose your hero's primary stat as the one to get an extra stat. So if you're an agi hero, it should be 121. If you're a strength hero, it should be 211. Int hero 112. Sadly, that's not exactly the best option for certain heroes. Like for Shadow Hunter, you probably don't care for that extra +1 agi. You would rather have int or at least strength, so he's more survivable. But I still think it would be better than having some weird toggle mechanic where every time you pick up a circlet now, you have to decide, is this the stat I want? And I think I've heard it decide. I've heard it starts on agility, so you have to, like, unless you're Blade or Demon Hunter, you pretty much always have to toggle every circlet you pick up, right? That seems kind of bad and an annoyance. And it's not always clear currently which stat it's on, because the circlet icon doesn't change colors like it does in Dota, for instance, or whatever. So it's not my favorite change, but I think it can be worked to be fine. If they make the icons have better clarity, if they change it so it's not a toggle, but the other change I said where it just gives your primary attribute +1 instead, I think things like that be fine. And then they should also, while doing this, make it in line with the other items that it drops with. So make it 125 gold instead of 185 or whatever. Because you don't want to pay 185 gold for this, right? Probably. Does Circlet deserve the nerf? I think it's fine to nerf Circlet. Circlet's definitely really powerful. I think a lot of people could get away with not buying an extra archer or footman or ghoul and just buying a circlet instead. And the circlet would probably help them more. Because if their hero is doing more, they're generally better off. So I don't know. I think circlet's good. Unless people run out of inventory, Yeah, now circlet's kind of mediocre for sure. Like, this is barely better than that Ring of Power on Springtime, right? Like, you get +1 more than the Ring of Power, which is kind of bad. It should definitely be lowered cost, similar to the other items. Yeah. They could lower claws to +4 as well. I don't know if that's good or not. What other items are there? Circlet, claws, ring, gloves of 8. Yeah, they could definitely lower claws to 4. And it'd still be fine as well. It'd feel bad compared to the +5 and +6 claws that it used to be, but it'd still be relevant. But then you might see +3 rings actually being one of the better drops. I don't know. Like, the armor might just be worth enough. I personally already like rings in general to have at least one on melee heroes, but or mostly just one. I don't usually like multiple, just one is good. Lowered move speed on the item auras. I'm not sure if this one was needed, but maybe it's fine. Because it is kind of awkward when someone finds an itemized move speed aura, because that can change the game, right? Like a race might normally not be this fast and cannot normally get this fast, but then they just luck into an item and now they're fast. So maybe this is fine, but I don't think it's necessarily needed either. I think it would have been fine to leave it at what it was at, because it was already a weaker version to begin with. Right. Let's see. I don't think we care too much to talk about any of this, but if I am going to bring up some other random things, as far as items go, I think ring +4 should be at least ring +5, potentially even ring +6, but maybe ring +5 is fine enough. Crystal Ball. Honestly, Crystal Ball has a lot of value sometimes, but yeah, you could just lower the cooldown on it again by like an extra 5 seconds or something small. I don't know its exact cooldown right now, but just give it some small buff, like cooldown. Spell resistance. Spell resistance would definitely be strong. I don't know if it's the right way to go about buffing it. Maybe it's fine though, like having a ring +3 and then having like a from the higher ring instead be like ring +3 with 10% spell resistance. But it's kind of awkward still, right? Like spell resistance items are targeted mostly against undead. Does Blizzard still have developers working on Warcraft 3? Well, it says December 13th, not April 1st, so I think it's not an April Fool's joke, but we'll see. Those numbers sound really small. Like think of Rune Bracers. Rune Bracers is 33%, right? But I don't know. I do think they could do that as well. They could make it have spell resistance. I don't think the ring +3 needs it, but ring +4 and 5 could. Clause 9 could be lowered to clause 8. Clause 12 can stay the same. Honestly, clause 12 could be slightly buffed even for all I care. I don't really care. Like a lot of the other items that are also good. I guess maybe clause 12 is fine as in now with how much auras keep getting nerfed. It is weird to see Brilliance Aura not nerfed with these ones getting nerfed though. They could have nerfed Brilliance Aura from items. But I think it's fine. Like red items should be kind of impactful because that's the stage of the game where your opponent can actually contest you for that and have a having a good creep route and stuff like that matters. It's not like the early game items that both sides are just going to get one. It's items that you can fight your opponent over. How do I fight first them right now? Or how would I? I currently do Keeper Panda. Expo versus Human. not usually Expo versus Orc. And I go either Mass Dryads or Dryad Bear against Orc, and Expo into Dryad Bear against Human. So, yeah. Um, yeah, I guess we can look at my matchups as well, right? So with these changes, my matchup versus Orc doesn't change much. I would still play the same thing because I actually rely on level 2 Treants more so than the Entangle. And I also oftentimes build hunts, and even more so if they're not going to go headhunters. So personally, against Orc, everything's the same and fine for me apart from Grunt being stronger. But if I'm making Dryads, usually they don't want Grunts anyways, they want Raiders. So it's mostly this change that does anything against me, the Blade Master Mirror Images. But 10% is very small since it's only base damage, not item and aura damage as far as I know. Against Human, this is good for me. I don't often even harass peasants, so, or at least not too much in the early game, because I think it's usually better to just get level 3. Humans are too good at defending. This is like minor to me, but maybe late game it'll matter more because I do sometimes do drops or harasses. The blacksmith cost is very small, but at the same time, like, could be a big deal if the blacksmith comes out quicker, right? Like now they can block off their expansion gold mine even easier and quicker because the cost is reduced and this is the building they want. If blacksmith was cheap enough, they might even put blacksmiths in your base, similar to how lumber mills are. But it's probably better just to use lumber mills still, right? But yeah, the control magic is good. Siphon change is good. Mortar team's annoying, but since most of the other stuff here is like these are nerfs, like I was saying when analyzing it, I think this is fine. But I do think it's kind of annoying because mortars are actually buffable and healable and stuff like that, unlike mechanical units that need like repair. So I don't know if that's good. And I think undead changes, like some of these are fine. Like this is fine. This is whatever. This is good. This is could be better, but it's something. But like I feel like maybe undead changes could have been different overall. I don't know. As elf, I mostly feel weak against human and undead in situations where I rely on entangle to pick off ghouls and footmen. Now I'm like, what do I do? They're just gonna run at me and I don't have the time to attack the unit I'm entangling to kill it. Right? I don't have the time to focus down a footman after I entangle it because they're just going to be focusing me with their Archmage and Water Ellies, and I'm going to drain all my wells and die. Currently, you can just afford to do the damage you need. You can afford to put in those couple hits and then run away with your keeper. But with this change, 2 less seconds, if you have to put in another 2 hits, suddenly your Moonwells are gone against humans harass. So hopefully Immolation's good and we become Demon Hunter players. Or maybe I'll have to learn Warden or something. Start shadow striking them. Yeah. Yeah. As mentioned earlier for the Witch Doctor that you're commenting on, I think the Witch Doctor change is bad. I think it would have been better to make heal wards the same as they were, but an adept upgrade rather than master, and then make stasis trap master maybe. You know, give orc that healing earlier because it's still dispellable. It still takes like one hit to kill it, so it's not a huge deal, and it can serve as their sort of healing out of fights without having to rely on 2 sets of 3 salves over 45 seconds plus clarity Shadowhunter heal wave to heal everything back up. So yeah. Yeah, I think current meta, the extra 50 health for grunts could be pretty strong against elf, combined with entangle nerfs in ultravision tier 2. Like those are all big changes to the current pro scene meta. Ultravision, entangle, brute strength are big changes to elf versus orc at top level. So I don't know. But personally it doesn't affect me much because I don't play that style. I don't play the Keeper Alchemist expansion style. But yeah, I think that style will probably die down a bit and we would likely see more dryads or talons or something from elf against orc instead, and bears and whatever, because like grunt pushes with level 2 serpent wards, like an extra 50 health here could be pretty big deal because you can't go through the grunts to kill everything else with that extra tank ability. I don't know. Maybe 50 health isn't too big of a deal. We'll see. Um, is there any other things I would have liked to see changed or think should be changed? I feel like human should have maybe had some other change. Like I like some of the buffs and nerfs. Well, I mean, I guess the buffs are kind of whatever. The nerfs I like for human, but I feel like they maybe should have had some other buff that doesn't break things. But it's so hard because you really don't want to buff rifles or breakers and make them like just super good at tier 2 either. At least I don't want to buff. I don't know. We'll see. But I do think something else could be changed. Like maybe one of the other heroes like Mountain King gets some small buff somewhere. Fan won't work. Yeah, what is Fan's damage at max level? I guess I could just check. Fan 190. So yeah, it's currently it might be fine. It just depends. Because sometimes wait, how much? 40, 50. Yeah. You'd be very unlikely to one hit them with this, whereas sometimes you can still one hit with them with this, depending on the role. Because Warden does have like a high range of damage similar to Blade and DH, the Agi heroes. So it could matter. Anyways, I would say overall, apart from the piercing damage talons, which is problematic against destroyers, and immolation and cool frenzy. And maybe tanks. I think those changes should maybe not be as they are. I personally don't think heal wards need buffed either. Like I said, I think they just need to be more accessible. You know, either get them at adept or make them less mana cost or something, or quicker research on stuff. I don't know. Because heal wards are already good, so they don't need to be stronger. Like, that's not the problem. It's the problem is getting there while still having a presence on the map, right? So I'd say those things are the main things to like see how it changes before the actual patch releases. Not sure if I'm forgetting anything, but that's all I can think of. Yeah, like I said, I do think human maybe needs one more thing. Like buffed maybe a hero, but it can't be Archmage. They already buffed Paladin. You don't want to buff. It would have to be Mountain King, but I don't know what you buff on Mountain King. Do you make level 1 clap have a little bit bigger AoE? Do you add +5 damage to clap at level 1 and 2, and maybe level 3 stays the same? Like, is level 3 clap good enough as is? Yeah, maybe level 1 and level 2 clap should be slightly stronger. I don't know. I personally find clap to be pretty strong, but, you know, maybe he needs something to be slightly stronger. Because obviously human's not doing too good. And they don't even always pick Mountain King. They pick Panda and Blood Mage and stuff sometimes too. So, I don't know. Maybe something like that would be fine. We'll have to see what the final decisions are as we go forward. But I think that's about all I had to say about it. So hopefully you enjoyed some of my assessment on things. I don't think my opinions were very controversial overall, apart from, you know, potential complete reworks of statues to like have some sort of dispel, but like weaker other healing stuff, which I think would be cool. You know, dispel for undead at tier 2, but statues considerably weaker, so they aren't like hero powerhouses with infinite mana from just statues and super regen from Unholy Aura and statues. But yeah, I think most of the changes are fine. We'll just have to see how it plays out once a couple things like this get fixed to be how it's supposed to be.